In today's podcast, I'm going to share with you a proven leadership development process that you can complete with your direct reports and your leader. Leadership development is an essential skill that every successful leader must have. And after completing this process thousands of times, I boil it down to 4 efficient steps that leads to a development plan that will have the greatest impact on that leader, your team, and organization. Well, welcome to today's podcast. Today, I'm going to share with you a leadership development process that I want you to take and run with. I want you to use it across your organization. I've used this process so many times that I have taken out the fluff and really nailed it down to 4 key steps. And after I share it with you, I want you to take this process and start using it across your organization. But obviously, I want to make it your own. But use this as the baseline to making it your own. This is really what I would call a best practice leadership development process. And I want you to use it to build leaders at every level of your organization. Whether you have 3 employees or 300, this is a process that works at every level. And so let's go through the process and really dive into what an effective leadership development process looks like. Now, when a client reaches out to me or a leader reaches out to me and says, hey, I want a leadership development plan, this is the process that we use. And I'm going to share that with you today. So I'm going to walk through each step in detail, and then at the end of it, I'll summarize at a high level so you understand this process in depth. But one of the things about this leadership development process is it's very simple, it's very efficient, but it's very effective. And again, anytime you do something hundreds and hundreds of times, you have a way to kind of tune it in and get it to exactly what you need. And that's what I've done. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And I'm excited about sharing it with you because as I coach leaders across our country, this is the one process that I share with most of them, is here's a simple leadership development process that you can use. And so let's dive into that today and provide you a leadership development process that you can use across your organization. So the first meeting, which we call meeting number 1, let's say and just to put some context or background to this, in this case, I'll call you the leader, and then you're putting a development plan together for your direct report. So I'll use the terms leader and direct report as I'm going through this. So in meeting number 1, the leader and the direct report meet for probably an hour and a half. And you review the leadership development process and its objectives. And it's really about just getting to know each other. And really, it comes down to telling your story. And I always suggest that the leader tell their story first, because if you want transparency and vulnerability, you first must give it. We have a saying that you got to give it to get it. So when I'm in a leadership development process, the first thing I do is tell my story, and I talk about where I was born, how many brothers and sisters I have, what was growing up like. How did I discover my career path? And I talk about my family, my wife and my kids, and I share with them how I got to this point, how I got to be in front of them today, and what were the big things that really shaped the person and the leader that I am today. And so as the leader, be vulnerable. Tell your story. I talk about the struggles I've had. I talk about the successes I have. I talk about my blind spots, my style. I talk about the mistakes that I make. And I just really put it all out there as a leader, and I'm very transparent and vulnerable about who I am as a leader and how I got here and the things that I do great and the things that I don't do very well at all. And so tell your story first, and then that shows your direct report how to tell you their story. And so that's really the first meeting. It's really just getting to know each other at a depth much more than you know them today. And it's really about building that connection. And then after the leader and the direct report tell their story, it's really about developing next steps. Now, before I get on to next steps, one of the things that I suggest as the leader of the process, and you're taking a direct report through it, is that you're taking a lot of notes. I take the notes on a laptop. I have it over to my side, so I don't put it between me and the person that I'm coaching. But having the notes allows me to build the most effective leadership development plan. So I would encourage you to take notes as they tell your story. I record, where they were born, what was growing up like, their siblings, their kids, everything, because it gives me the foundation to write the most effective leadership development plan. So once both the leader and the direct report tell their story, then you develop next steps. Next steps are between meeting 1 and meeting 2, you're going to have the direct report take some behavioral science assessments. Now, we use 4 behavioral science assessments when putting a leadership development plan together. We use DISC, what we call your behavioral style, because that's how a person's going to lead, work, and sell. We use what we call the driving forces, which is why they lead, sell, and manage and work. And we use the soft skills indicator, which tells us their level of soft skills that they have. And then we use emotional intelligence, which obviously tells us their level of emotional intelligence across the 5 factors of EQ. And we use these sciences. I believe behavioral science is an essential part. It's a requirement of effective leadership development for a couple of reasons. Number one of the greatest objectives, the top objectives of every leadership development process is self-awareness. We must first lead self before we can lead others. And what the behavioral science tools do is that they provide you, in the case of the tools that we use one of the most reliable and accurate tools in the industry, because we're dealing with people's lives here. We're dealing with their careers. And we want to make sure that we can trust the data. And there's a lot of tools out there. And every tool have different level of reliability and validity. And you just want to make sure that you use a tool you can trust. We trust the tools that we use here because we're dealing with people's lives, their careers, their livelihoods, how they take care of their families. And behavioral science is essential because it brings self-awareness. So the tools that we use across 4 sciences provide you over 100 pages of content about yourself. And so the first reason we use behavioral science is the level of self-awareness that comes from it. The second thing that comes from using behavioral science is it easily provides you, 3 to 5 key areas of development. Like, for example, we can measure their level of role clarity. Oftentimes, leaders will have low role clarity. Is that lower clarity of their role at work? Is it lower role clarity of one of their personal roles? It allows us to really understand quickly where they're at and helps us identify the 3 to 5 development priorities that are going to have the greatest impact on their performance, both professionally and personally. The next reason that we use behavioral science is that it allows us really to talk about anything. It allows us to talk about everything, professional and personal. I mean, the future of talent management is developing the total person. And if you're not developing the total person at your organization, you're going to have, especially the younger generation, move on. We like to say that everybody has issues, and if they tell you they don't, that's their first issue. And so one thing we have to recognize as leaders is that we have to be open about our issues and our challenges, because we can pour resources into that direct report. We can help them work through it, whatever that issue is. And so it's really important that we recognize that when putting a leadership development plan together, it's about how do we help them perform professionally and personally, because in today's world, it is so difficult to separate the two. Almost impossible from my perspective. And the last thing about behavioral science assessments, about as far as the leadership development process is concerned, is we use multiple sciences because it gives us data from many different angles about the leader. So for example, if the leader has a lower I in their DISC style, they're somewhat more reserved, somewhat more introverted, you could make the assumption they're not good at building relationships. But in fact, in the soft skills indicator, it tells us their understanding of other people. So it's important to use multiple sciences because it gives you different angles, and it gives you the data that you don't make assumptions about the leader. You know precisely exactly what their DISC style is, what motivates them, where their soft skills are at, where their EQ's at. We're not making any assumptions in developing their leadership development plan. So if you want more information on using behavioral science assessments in this leadership development process, just email us at info@stopthevanilla.com. We'll provide you all the information you need. But I will not develop, after doing this process, again, over 1,000 times, I calculated how many leadership development plans I've drafted in 20 years of doing this, and it's over 1,000 of them. I will not put a leadership development plan together without using behavioral science, because it's the foundation of understanding who a person is, and that's where leadership development starts. All right, so you have meeting one and you get to know each other, you tell each other's story, you build a connection, and then between meeting one and meeting two, the direct report takes the behavioral science assessments, and then the results go to both the leader and the direct report, and each person reviews them in detail coming into the second meeting, meeting number two. And it's really easy to understand the behavioral science results. We provide videos on each science that you can watch, so you can quickly get up to speed. I mean, a lot of people understand DISC. Understanding your driving forces is really easy, and so if we can help in understanding behavioral science results, let us know. Okay, so then you get to meeting two. Meeting two, the direct report and the leader meet, and the leader guides the direct report through the assessments, and they first look at the DISC. When you're looking at your DISC graph, what are the strengths of your style? What are the blind spots of your style? Are you adapting your style when you come to work? The other thing we talk about in putting a leadership development plan together is a person's leadership identity. Your leadership identity is, how do you most effectively lead with your style? If you have a DI style, you're going to lead very differently than if you have an SC style. And so leadership identity is, how do I most effectively lead with the style that I have? Because I can't change my style. So how do I most effectively lead with the one that I have? So first review the DISC and talk about the strengths and blind spots of their style. Then review their driving forces assessment. And that's their top 4 motivators. What are their top 4 motivators? And are their motivators being fed in their current role? Because if a person's motivators are being fed in their current role, they're going to be retained. They're going to be engaged in their work. And your chances of retaining them dramatically go up when their motivators are being fed. Then you review their soft skills. Where do they have clarity in the world? Where do they have clarity in self? Do they have clarity of other people? Do they have clarity of self? Do they have clarity of roles? Do they have clarity of their future? Those are the types of conversations you're having. And as you're talking through their assessments results, these development priorities just keep coming up. I mean, it's every time I do an assessment debrief, identifying 3 to 5 development areas is a piece of cake. That's why the assessments are so valuable to a leadership development process. And really what it all comes down to is really about self-awareness. It's about understanding, owning, and leveraging our natural behavioral style, because we can't manage something that we're not aware of. And then through the process of the debrief, we really start talking about techniques that they can use to manage and leverage their behavioral style to be a more effective leader. So for example, in my behavioral style, I have a very fast pace, a low S, and I have a very active mind, high D. And so listening is a challenge for me. And so we talk about techniques that I can use to be a more effective listener. And one of them is listening with your eyes. It's really looking at the person, looking them right in the eyes and not getting distracted by something out the window or something that's going on outside the meeting room. It's looking at them and staying focused on who they are. When I do that, I listen more effectively. So that's an example of a technique. And then lastly, if you use emotional intelligence science, go through their emotional intelligence. The graphs show you where they lack emotional intelligence versus the national mean. Are they within one standard deviation of the national mean? And really it's easy to identify where their growth opportunities are based on the report. And so meeting 2 is really about diving deep into their assessments, increasing their self-awareness, and identifying the 3 to 5 areas of their 3 to 5 development priorities that come from just the behavioral science results. And then document those 3 to 5 areas as you have that conversation, all right? And so then the next meeting is meeting number 3. And the prep for meeting number 3 is for your direct report to complete what we call the development questionnaire. In the development questionnaire, we'll put a link in the notes of this podcast for you to download the questionnaire and also for you to download this process. because again, it's very easy to do. But some examples of questions that we have in our development questionnaire, what are your expectations from this process? What are the strengths of your style that you bring to the company and the organization that we need to leverage? What are your blind spots to your style that could impact the performance of the team? How do you feel your organization perceives your style? What are your do's and don'ts of effective communication? What's your vision professionally? What's your vision personally? What's your greatest frustration in your current role? And then what are the specific goals that you want to accomplish over the next 12 months that'll move you towards that professional and that personal vision? So those are just examples of some of the questions that are in the development questionnaire. So the direct report completes the questionnaire and sends it to the leader prior to session meeting number 3. And so meeting number 3 is relatively simple in that you go through the questionnaire. And so the direct report gets to talk about what they want to accomplish, what their expectations of the process are, where they think their growth opportunities are. And the power of this process and what makes it so efficient is that you have the behavioral science results that you trust telling you where their growth opportunities are, where their strengths, I should mention, their strengths and their growth opportunities are. And then you have the direct report completing the questionnaire. And when you combine the data from those 2 data points, you're going to have 10 to 15 development priorities. And really it's about focusing it down to the 3 to 5 that are going to have the greatest impact right now. And that's what makes this process so efficient. Meeting 1 is getting to know each other, telling your stories, being vulnerable and transparent with each other. Meeting 2 is about going through the assessment results and really understanding where the person's at and identifying their development priorities. And meeting 3 is going through their development questionnaire. What do they want to accomplish? Where do they want to be in 3 years professionally and personally? What do they think their growth opportunities are? And when you combine those 2 steps, the assessments and the questionnaire, I've never struggled to come up with development priorities. It's typically not, the challenge is not coming up with the development priorities, the challenge is prioritizing them. Which ones are going to have the greatest impact? And so when you finish meeting number 3, you have the 3 to 5 development priorities, and then you list specific action plans that you're going to have to achieve each of those development priorities. And you put an owner and a due date on them. And so, for example, for emotional intelligence, one of the action plans may be to read a book on EQ. Let me just think, for low role clarity, you may go through the key accountabilities process to get them clarity in their current role. For low sense of self, they may need to get some counseling or coaching on that, how to discover what's creating that low sense of self, how to release it, how to move past it. There are a ton of different development priorities, so it'd be difficult to list all the examples. But the point is that once you list the 3 to 5 leadership development priorities that are going to have the greatest impact on them, then list the specific action plans that they're going to take and the due dates that they're going to be done by. A development plan without specific action plans with owners and due dates is just a lot of talk. There has to be specific things that they're going to get done. Like I said, like reading a book, get coaching, go to a webinar, go to a conference. And maybe you as the leader are going to keep coaching them even more. But that is the leadership development process that we use. 3 meetings, 4 steps, and very simple, and you're going to come out of it with the development priorities are going to have the greatest impact. And I develop our leadership, I update our leadership development plans here at Stop the Vanilla every 6 months. Typically there's 10 to 15 leadership development priorities that come out of every process. So again, it's about what are the priorities. Now, what are some of the benefits of this leadership development process? The direct report's going to really understand, own, and leverage their style. They're really going to have a focused leadership development plan on the 3 to 5 development priorities. They're going to have the greatest impact on their leadership performance. It's really going to help them identify what their vision is. We always focus on a 3-year vision for their professional life and their personal life. It really helps them enhance their communication by understanding the do's and don'ts of communicating for themselves, but also how to communicate with others. When we put a development plan together, we like to look at hard skills versus soft skills. we look at both of them. Hard skills are what training, how can they become more technically competent in their role? How could they be better at being an accountant, being an engineer? What hard skills do they need to learn? And then the soft skills are obviously going to come from the assessments and the questionnaire. And then the last thing you really want to talk about before you part is how often are we going to review your development plan and make sure your action plans are getting done. And our recommendation is that you review those monthly to make sure those action plans are getting done. And so you develop these 3 to 5 development priorities. You have the action plans that direct report's going to complete over the next 6 months, and then you just do it again. And just use this very simple and effective process to put a development plan in place that's going to help each of your direct reports and every leader at every level in the organization accomplish what they want professionally and personally. And again, I've done this process just so many times, and so I've made it my own. And I want you to use this process that I've given to you today. Download the process, review it, make it your own, make the tweaks that you need to make it your own. But I can just tell you this process works because it's efficient, it's using objective data from the behavioral science results, and it's digging into the direct report, the person that's being developed, into what they want to accomplish. And when you combine those two, it's just very effective. Leadership development is one of the most important skills a leader must develop. And using this simple and efficient but effective development process to become the shepherd of the talent. A leader who helps other leaders become the best self that they can be, the best leader that they can be, both at work and at home. Leadership development is an essential skill to build the team to achieve your dream. Here at Stop the Vanilla, we want to help you achieve what you want in your business, your career, and your life through the right plan and the right talent.
I'm your ice cream man, stop me when I'm passing by. Oh my, I'm your ice cream man, stop me when I'm passing by.